When I opened my eyes that morning, the first thing I felt was cold air on my head. My hair, my pride, was gone. I reached up, trembling, and realized I was bald. It was my birthday, and the people I loved most had left me a gift I'll never forget. If you've ever trusted someone only to find out they were laughing behind your back, then you'll understand my pain. My name's Margaret, though most folks just call me Miss Maggie. I'm 62, retired, and I used to think I'd done everything right. I raised my son, Caleb, on my own after his father walked out when he was 5. There were days when I worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and serving breakfast at the diner by morning, just to keep a roof over our heads. And through all those years my boy would say, "Mama, when I'm grown, you'll never work again. I'll take care of you." Those words were the light that carried me through every tired morning. But somewhere between growing up and getting married, Caleb changed. Or maybe, just maybe, he started listening to her. Her name was Tanya. Beautiful, smart, charming on the outside. The kind of woman who could turn a room with her smile and cut you to pieces with her tongue once the door closed. First, I wanted to like her. Truly I did. I cooked for her, invited her over, even passed down my mother's old recipes. But Tanya had this way of looking at me, like I was some stubborn weed that refused to die. And Caleb, my sweet Caleb, just stood there smiling, not noticing the frost behind her eyes. A week before my birthday, Tanya called. Her voice was syrup sweet. "Mama Maggie, we've got something special planned for you," she said. "You just sleep in, don't worry about a thing. We'll come by in the morning." For the first time in a long time, I felt excited. I even laid out my best Sunday dress the night before. Soft yellow with white lace sleeves. I brushed my hair, thick and silver now, and thought maybe things are getting better. That night I went to bed smiling. I dreamed about Caleb as a little boy again. The way he'd crawl into my bed after a nightmare, whispering, "Don't let the monsters get me, Mama." And I'd tell him, "As long as I'm here, baby, no monsters coming near you." Funny how life flips things around. Because that morning I woke up and realized the monster was already in my house. The first thing I remember was the faint scent of something chemical. It wasn't perfume. It was sharp, like cleaning fluid mixed with burnt plastic. My pillow was damp. My scalp tingled. When I sat up, tufts of hair slid off my shoulders like fallen feathers. First I thought I was dreaming. I rubbed my head and more strands came loose. By the time I stumbled to the mirror, what I saw made my knees buckle. My hair gone. Every last strand. My head smooth, red, and stinging. I gasped so loud it startled the cat off the bed. On the dresser was a gift bag. Pink tissue paper. A tag that read, "From Caleb and Tanya. Happy birthday." My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a bottle of shampoo. The same one Tanya had given me last week. Except now I noticed the faint smell. The same one from my pillow. My mind raced. No, it couldn't be. I called Caleb. He didn't answer. I texted Tanya. She replied within seconds. "Oh dear, did it cause a reaction? Maybe your scalp's too sensitive for salon-grade products. Anyway, we'll stop by later. Love you." Salon-grade? My hair had melted. I sank into the chair, tears spilling down my face. Not just because of my hair, but because deep down I knew this wasn't an accident. This was cruelty dressed as kindness. The doorbell rang around noon. Caleb stood there with Tanya, smiling like it was any other day. When his eyes landed on me, his grin faltered. "Mama, what happened to your hair?" I looked straight at Tanya. She covered her mouth in fake shock. "Oh no, you didn't mix the bottles, did you? I told you one was cleaner, one was shampoo." "You didn't?" My blood turned cold. I remembered the 2 identical bottles she'd left last week. One labeled conditioner. The other, cleanser. I could barely speak. "You knew," I whispered. She blinked, all innocent. "I'm sorry if there was a mix-up, but we meant no harm. Right, babe?" she said, nudging Caleb's arm. He looked between us, lost, torn. And then he said the words that shattered me. "Mama, you always overreact. Tanya's been trying so hard. Maybe you just misunderstood." I felt something inside me break, quietly like glass underfoot. Later that night, when they left, I sat in front of the mirror, tracing the reflection of a woman I barely recognized. My hair was gone, but so was something deeper, trust. Then my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail. From Tanya. Her voice was low, whispering to someone, maybe a friend. Did you see her face? Bald as an egg. Maybe now she'll stop acting like the queen of this house. I froze. For a moment I couldn't breathe. And that's when I decided this wasn't over. I didn't raise a son to let another woman destroy me. And before my next birthday, they'd both learn exactly what I meant. If you've ever been betrayed by the ones who promised to love you, you know that silence can scream louder than words. Hit like if you've ever been through something that broke your heart, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Because this story is only just beginning. I didn't leave my house for 3 days. Not because of shame, though Lord knows when I caught my reflection it did make my heart ache, but because I needed silence to think. Silence to breathe. Silence to plan. My scalp still burned, but the fire inside me was worse. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw Tanya's smirk. Every time I closed my eyes I heard her voice. Bald as an egg. People talk about heartbreak like it's a single blow. But sometimes it's slow, like 1,000 tiny cuts you only feel when you try to heal. I'd spent my whole life protecting my son. Now I was learning how to protect myself. On the 4th morning I wrapped a soft scarf around my head and went to the kitchen. My neighbor, Miss Clara, came over with her usual knock. She took one look at me, gasped, and dropped her purse. Maggie, baby, what on earth? I just smiled, tired. It's fine, Clara. Just a bad reaction. She looked at me like she didn't believe a word. A bad reaction doesn't come in a bottle with your daughter-in-law's handwriting on it. I wanted to laugh. Or cry. But I did neither. Instead I whispered, they think they broke me. But they don't know me. Miss Clara sat with me sipping tea, both of us quiet for a while. Then she said something that changed everything. Maggie, didn't you tell me you still have that letter from Henry? The one about the insurance policy. Henry. My late husband. A man I hadn't spoken about in years because the memory still stung like salt in a wound. Yeah, I said slowly. I kept it locked in the old box. Why? Clara leaned closer. Because if that policy's still active, and if Caleb's name is on it, you might just be sitting on the one thing Tanya can't fake her way through. Her words lit a spark in me. A quiet, fierce kind of hope. That evening, I pulled the old cedar box out from under my bed. It was scratched and dusty, smelling faintly of cedar and thyme. Inside were folded letters, birth certificates, an old wedding photo, me in lace, Henry grinning like he'd won the world. And there, under everything, a thick envelope. I opened it slowly. Inside were several documents, one stamped with Henry's signature and a date I'd nearly forgotten. It was a joint insurance policy, one Henry had set up before he died. But that wasn't all. Attached to it was a second document, handwritten, stating that in the event of my death, all assets including the house would pass directly to Caleb. Only one problem. It was unsigned. And tucked behind it was the signed version. But this one wasn't what it seemed. The signature on it wasn't Henry's. I knew his handwriting like I knew my own breath. No, this signature, this forgery was recent. Shaky. And unmistakably Tanya's attempt at playing clever. My breath caught. She'd tried to fake my husband's will. That meant she'd been planning something much darker than shampoo bottles and insults. The next day I drove downtown, still wearing my scarf, and met with Mr. Graham, an old lawyer friend of Henry's. He was in his 70s now, gray-haired and gentle-eyed, but sharp as ever. When I handed him the documents, he scanned them quickly, frowning. This signature's fake, he said within seconds. No question about it. I nodded. I figured as much. He leaned back in his chair. You want to press charges? I shook my head. Not yet. Then what do you want, Maggie? I smiled faintly. The truth. And the right time to show it. He looked at me for a long moment, then chuckled. You always were the patient one. Henry used to say you could wait out a thunderstorm. Well, I said softly, it's starting to rain again. That weekend, Caleb called. Mama, he said, his voice cautious. We're having a small family dinner. Tanya says she wants to apologize. You'll come. A chill ran down my spine. The way he said, Tanya says. Not we want you there. Not I miss you, Mama. Just Tanya says. Still I said yes. Because sometimes the only way to expose a lie is to sit quietly and let it unfold in front of everyone. When I walked into their house Sunday evening, Tanya greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Mama Maggie, you look different," she said, tilting her head. "I do," I said calmly. "Bald suits me, don't you think?" Her smile faltered just for a second. Dinner was quiet, too quiet. Caleb kept glancing between us, trying to pretend everything was normal. Tanya served food with fake cheer, clinking plates a little too loudly. Finally, she set down her fork and sighed dramatically. "I think we should all move past this little misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" I asked. She smiled sweetly. "You know, the shampoo thing. I feel terrible about it." Caleb looked relieved. "See, Mama? She feels bad. Maybe we can just—" But I raised a hand. "Before we move on," I said slowly, "I have something for you both." I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded copy of the insurance papers. Tanya's face went pale before she even saw what it was. Caleb frowned. "What's this?" "Something your father left behind," I said. "Something I think you'll both find interesting." Tanya's voice trembled. "Why are you showing us that now?" "Because," I said, meeting her eyes, "I thought my family should know what happens when you forge a dead man's signature." The color drained from her face. Caleb froze. "What are you talking about?" he whispered. I placed the papers on the table. I had them checked by Henry's old lawyer. He confirmed what I already knew. The signature on this will. "It isn't your father's." Tanya stammered. I don't know what you're implying." But I leaned forward. My voice was calm, quiet. "I'm implying you tried to take my home, my savings, my peace. But you failed." Silence filled the room. Even the clock seemed to stop ticking. Caleb's hands trembled as he reached for the papers. "Tanya, tell me she's lying." Tanya opened her mouth, but no sound came out. That was all I needed to see. I stood up, my scarf catching the light from the chandelier. "You know," I said softly, "I used to pray every night that my son would have a good woman, someone who'd stand beside him when life got hard. But I never prayed for a woman who'd stand between him and the truth." And with that I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. Because sometimes the quietest exits echo the loudest. As I stepped into the cool night air, I took a deep breath. For the first time in years it didn't feel heavy. I had lost my hair, but I had found my voice. You ever notice how silence can be louder than words? That's what I heard when I left that dinner. Not footsteps, not voices, just silence. The kind that follows truth when it finally shows up at the table. I drove home slow that night, one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting on my scarf. My head still tender, my heart still bruised. But inside something had shifted. See, when you live long enough, you realize strength doesn't always come from fighting. Sometimes it comes from standing still, letting people show who they really are. And oh, did they show it. When I got home, I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window. The street outside was quiet, one porch light flickering, a stray cat darting across the yard. I thought about my boy. About the little hands that once reached for mine when he had nightmares. About the way he used to whisper, "Mama, you're my hero." Now that same boy couldn't even look me in the eye. I'd seen the shame on his face when I showed those papers. He knew. Deep down, he knew everything Tanya had done. But he was too scared to face it. And that hurt more than anything else, not what Tanya did, but what he didn't. The next morning, I woke up to knocking on my door. First, I thought I imagined it. But it came again, louder. I opened it to find Caleb standing there. Hair messy, eyes red, his hands shaking. "Mama," he said, voice breaking. "Can I come in?" I didn't answer. I just stepped aside. He walked in, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the steam rising from the kettle. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he whispered, "You were right." My heart clenched. "About what, baby?" He swallowed hard. "About Tanya." She admitted it. The forged papers. Everything. I sat down across from him, my hands folded tight. "And what are you going to do now?" He looked lost, like a little boy again, trapped in a man's guilt. "I don't know. I thought she loved me. I thought we were a family." I sighed. "Sometimes love can make you blind, Caleb. But blindness doesn't mean you have to stay in the dark." He buried his face in his hands. "Mama, I'm so sorry. I should have protected you." I reached over, touched his hand gently. You should've, yes. But you can still make things right. That afternoon, Caleb told me everything. How Tanya had pushed him to convince me to sell the house, how she'd whispered lies about me being unstable, how she planned to use the fake documents once I was gone. Gone. She wanted me gone. He said it like he couldn't believe it himself. But I could. Because I'd seen that kind of greed before. The kind that hides behind charm and a smile. The kind that never gets full no matter how much it takes. I can't go back there, Caleb said quietly. Not after what she did. Then don't, I told him. Start fresh. Start honest. He looked up at me, tears in his eyes. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I smiled, tired but sure. Forgiveness isn't for you, baby. It's for me. For a while things were quiet. I went about my days as usual, tending my garden, feeding the birds, taking walks with Miss Clara. Sometimes when the wind blew just right, I'd feel the soft touch of air on my bare scalp. I could have worn a wig, but I didn't. Because every time I caught my reflection, I didn't see loss anymore. I saw freedom. I had survived the fire, and now I was standing in the ashes, unburned. But peace, I've learned, doesn't always stay quiet for long. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail from Tanya. It was short, handwritten, no return address. You ruined my life. I hope you're proud of yourself. I laughed. Out loud right there in my kitchen. Because for the first time in a long time I realized she couldn't touch me anymore. Not my house. Not my peace. Not my power. I folded the letter, set it in the same box that once held Henry's papers and whispered, I didn't ruin your life, Tanya. You did that all by yourself. A week later, Caleb came by with groceries. He looked tired but lighter somehow. I filed for divorce, he said softly. I nodded. Good. Some things you can't fix, baby. You can only learn from them. He hesitated, then looked at me like he'd been carrying something heavy. Mama, he said, I'm moving back home for a while. If you'll let me. For a moment my heart wanted to say no, not out of anger but fear. Fear of being hurt again. But then I remembered that little boy with scraped knees, promising to make me proud. And I couldn't turn him away. Of course, baby, I said quietly. Home's always been here. That night, after he went to bed, I sat by the window again, the same window where I'd once cried. Now I just looked out at the moonlight and whispered, thank you. Not to anyone in particular, just to life itself. Because even through betrayal, even through heartbreak, life had given me a gift. Not the one I wanted, but the one I needed. The gift of seeing who people truly are. And who I still could be. Sometimes, healing doesn't come with grand apologies or perfect endings. Sometimes it's just waking up one morning, looking in the mirror and realizing, you survived what was meant to destroy you. And maybe, just maybe, you came out stronger. Have you ever noticed how peace feels different when you've earned it? Not the kind that just happens, but the kind that comes after the storm, after the betrayal, after the truth finally comes out. That's the kind of peace I felt in my bones. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel heavy anymore. The walls didn't whisper his secrets, and the floorboards didn't echo with arguments or lies. It was just quiet, the kind of quiet that holds healing inside it. I spent my mornings on the porch, wrapped in a shawl, watching the sunrise spread over my garden. The same garden Henry used to ignore, saying flowers were a waste of time. Now it was full of color: tulips, roses, lavender. Each petal felt like proof that life could grow again, even after being cut down. Sometimes Caleb would join me. He'd bring 2 mugs of coffee, sit beside me and just breathe. We didn't need to talk much. Silence wasn't painful anymore. It was gentle, forgiving. He'd say, Mama, I don't know how you do it. After everything, how can you still be so calm? And I'd smile. Because I stopped fighting what I can't control, baby. You can't fix every wound, but you can make peace with your scars. Weeks passed. Tanya was gone, the divorce finalized. Caleb started helping around the community center, teaching kids how to fix cars. He said it made him feel useful again. I could see the change in him, the way he walked lighter, spoke softer. But sometimes, late at night, I'd see him sitting on the porch, staring out into the dark, his face caught between guilt and longing. One night, I stepped out and sat beside him. He looked at me with those same brown eyes that once belonged to a little boy asking for bedtime stories. "Mama," he whispered, "I wish I could take it all back. The things I said. The way I let her treat you. I was so blind." I touched his hand. "We all go blind for love, baby. The trick is remembering to open your eyes again." That night we talked for hours. About Henry. About the past. About how sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. And when he finally went to bed, I stayed up, watching the moon drift across the sky. For the first time I didn't feel angry. I just felt grateful. Grateful that I survived. Grateful that I didn't let bitterness take root in my heart. Because hate, baby, hate only grows where healing should be. A few days later, something unexpected happened. There was a knock at my door. When I opened it, a woman stood there, well-dressed, polite, holding a bouquet of lilies. "Mrs. Turner?" she asked softly. "Yes." She smiled nervously. "I'm sorry to bother you. I'm Tanya's sister." My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "What do you want?" She sighed. "I just came to say, I'm sorry. My sister hurt a lot of people. She's been trying to make things right, but she doesn't know how." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. My heart tugged, not out of pity but out of understanding. People who cause pain often carry their own kind of emptiness. It doesn't excuse them, but it explains them. I took a deep breath. "Tell her I forgive her," I said quietly. "Not for her sake, for mine." The woman nodded, tears filling her eyes. "You're a strong woman, Mrs. Turner." I smiled faintly. "No. I'm just a woman who's tired of being angry." After she left, I sat by the window again, the lilies on the table beside me. They smelled sweet like peace. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself cry. Not the kind of crying that hurts, but the kind that heals. Tears for what was lost. Tears for what survived. Tears for the woman I had finally become. A few months later, my birthday came around again. This time there were no cruel surprises. Just laughter. Caleb had organized a small dinner at home. Miss Clara brought her famous peach cobbler. The grandkids ran around the yard. And the house was full of life again. When the candles were lit, Caleb leaned over and kissed my cheek. "Happy birthday, Mama," he said, smiling. "I hope this one's better than the last." I chuckled. "Honey, anything's better than waking up bald." He laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. And in that moment, I realized something beautiful. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed. It had become strength, wisdom, peace. Later that night, after everyone left, I went to my bedroom and looked at the small wooden box on my dresser. The same one Henry had hidden from me all those years. It wasn't a symbol of secrets anymore. It was a reminder that truth always finds its way out. I touched it gently, then turned off the light. Before I went to sleep, I whispered to myself, "Sometimes the greatest gifts come after the worst heartbreaks." And I meant it. Because losing everything had taught me how to value what couldn't be taken away. My dignity, my peace, and the strength that had always been mine. Now tell me something, baby. Have you ever had a heartbreak that turned into your biggest blessing? Tell me where you're listening from. I love hearing your stories. And if you've ever come out stronger after being broken, like and share this video. Because no matter what they take from you, remember this. You can't break a woman who's already rebuilt herself.